What? What? No! Are you trying... What? Are you trying to tell me that Apple made a mistake? No, that's not... I can't happen. It can't happen now! Of course it can. They're the biggest company in the world. It happens all the time. Before y'all get ahead of yourselves and start trying to immediately somehow turn this into a debate of how, Drew, you were wrong because there was a problem and Apple admitted it. When did I say there wasn't a problem? I said there was a problem. It just wasn't as bad as everyone would say. Hello, everyone. My name's Jonathan Morrison. No, it isn't. But yes, Apple admitted that there was a software bug, not a hardware problem, with the down throttling on the MacBook Pro and actually worked with Dave Lee, the YouTuber who recently uploaded a video entitled, "I'm hating Apple now." They were like, we need to reach this guy. Apple, are you gonna do that more often now? Like, what's the... I don't know. So just so we're clear, because as soon as these reports started coming forward that Apple apologized for all the down throttling issues people were having with their i9 hexa-core MacBook Pros and said that they have been working with the Mr. Dave Lee on fixing this problem and have rolled out a software patch that allows the CPU to actually hit the advertised clock speed, not quite the turbo boost speed. So I'm still kind of wishing they would change their marketing a little bit, as you guys hopefully remember from the video when I talked about the MacBook Pro, that the marketing is bad. They should not exaggerate products to that extent, but all companies, including other technical specifications of any product, exaggerate things. No, that does not make it okay. I'm just saying, even though your computer may advertise itself as being 1 terabyte, you may get it and find out you only have access to 800 gigs. That sort of thing happens a lot. Yes, it happens with CPUs, but by the way, I'm not okay with it. I'm not saying that excuses it, and that's still a problem I have with Apple's advertising, is right now on their website it says that the Intel i9 core is allowing for a 70% increase in speed, and based on the export times and speed renders we've got from our good friend Jonathan Morrison, it doesn't look like you ever quite get to 70%, and if you do, man, it's gotta be some kind of rare situation. Or they're comparing the slowest possible 15-inch MacBook Pro to the maxed out newest MacBook Pro, which I guess you win this time if that's what you did. But Jonathan Morrison, in his updated MacBook Pro video, was able to compare last year's fastest i7 core with this year's fastest i9 core. And keep in mind, this was before Apple issued the apology and rolled out the software update that is supposed to fix all these down throttling issues. He actually did find a couple of instances where last year's i7 outperformed the i9. It was not the majority, it did not happen often, but yes, in a couple of instances that did end up happening. Hopefully though, with these new software patches Apple will be rolling out, we'll not have to worry about that anymore. And while sadly, yes, we're not hitting those turbo boost clock speeds that Apple advertises, like 4.8 gigahertz, if you want to get a laptop that can run a CPU that high, looks like you're going to be getting something in the gaming laptop category, or have to go with something a little bit thicker like Asus ZenBook or the Dell XPS, which still down throttle their cores, just not to the extent of the Apple's MacBook. But that slight disadvantage with the MacBook Pro 15-inch is compensated with other things like the fastest storage on the market. 32 gigabyte of RAM option, 4 terabytes of SSD, really fast SSD, and as Dave Lee has pointed out, also a very quiet laptop compared to the other laptops on the market. And while I haven't seen someone compare these yet, I'm imagining the Apple MacBook Pro probably beats out all those giant tank gaming laptops in the battery life department, which this means that I think for pro users, the MacBook Pro is still trying to cater to that Apple Core user base, which is making laptops thin and light. But yes, that does come at a compromise of not having the fastest CPU possible. I also think it's compensated by the fact that Apple themselves with macOS has a much more optimized suite of professional apps than you're going to get on a Windows 10 device. If you get a Dell XPS or you get a ZenBook, you're still going to be using Adobe Premiere Pro, which even with hopefully some new updates coming from Adobe pretty soon, I don't think are going to match or exceed the export times that you're going to get with a standard Final Cut Pro program with the latest patch MacBook Pro i9 CPU. That thing is going to export things so fast while keeping things relatively quiet. This, for one, I'm so happy to hear. It's so awesome when you find out that, wait a minute, software and optimization can result in better experiences? What? It's almost like getting software right is important. Adobe. But regardless, it's really great to see that Apple is willing to go on YouTube and be like, someone hates me. Why do they hate me? And then watch their video and be like, okay, what can we do about that? And luckily, since YouTubers are so quick to criticize Apple and so quick to upload those I hate Apple now videos, that Apple wants to try to play whack-a-mole with them and try to patch every problem we may end up complaining about. Which means that no, I hate Apple videos or Apple critique videos videos are not going to slow down. If anything, they'll increase. In fact, I'm debating making more of them just so that Apple will listen to my complaints. We might change my old Apple TV sucks video to all of Apple sucks now, and Apple, here's my email address if you want to contact me. For one, I'm very curious how working with a YouTuber went, because based on the Dave Lee video, he just explained Apple contacted him and he sent them the data of his export times, which means essentially if you boil down the whole we worked with a YouTuber, does that mean that Dave Lee's an engineer or a software designer? Not really. It basically means that Dave Lee went to Apple and said, hey, this isn't very fast and it should be faster. And Apple said, yeah, okay, let me look at it. There, is that better? And they hand it back to Dave Lee and he goes, well, I guess that'll work. I'm not trying to make fun of the situation. In fact, I think that's great, and I really hope that Apple does that more often with more and more complaints. Keep in mind, it probably will not happen with things like personal preference, like Apple removing the headphone jack on an iPad. While we may complain about that or start saying, I hate Apple now about that, that is not a design defect. That is literally how Apple is seeing the future. So they're probably not going to start adding Touch ID to the back of iPhones or adding back the headphone jacks just because people are complaining. But when they advertise something to work a specific way and it doesn't work that specific way, that's when I think Apple nowadays is realizing that in order for their PR to stay solid and to stay trustworthy, they need to stay on sites like YouTube and pay attention to what large personalities are saying, because just like so many of you are saying, YouTubers have a large influence now on what people buy. If a lot of people are going online and seeing that Dave Lee hates Apple and there's thermal throttling and they're going to have to put their MacBook in a freezer in order to get it to run properly, that's going to hurt Apple. So really glad Apple's acknowledging that, trying to be a little bit less arrogant than I am and say, I'm sorry, we messed up, let's move on now. Here's the fix, please like our product. And I think this is one of those happy stories where we finally get to say Apple did the right thing. And I'm gonna really savor that moment because it never happens very much. It just doesn't. Even people who hate Apple are starting to say things like, I'm glad they did this, or they did the right thing, good on you, Apple. But the haters, I'm sure, are gonna say like, this shouldn't have happened at all. You're right, it shouldn't have. But I just did that whole hate the product, not the company video, and people were like, but Apple lied. Apple made a mistake and they didn't apologize. Now they're apologizing. Well, they shouldn't make mistakes. Or people on Twitter are saying things like, if I'm spending $3,000 on a device, nothing should go wrong with it. That $3,000 device should work perfectly. Sadly, the price of a device never really changes how reliable it may be. If there's problems with a computer, or for instance, Jonathan Morrison brought up Teslas, no matter the price, things can still go wrong because all these products are really just built by people, ladies and gentlemen. Human beings who don't necessarily always know what they're doing. Look at those Apple repair videos that leaked recently. No matter how high up you go to the top of Apple's company, there are still people who are just like you and me. We're making mistakes on a daily basis, but hopefully we're learning from them. And I hope that Apple has learned from this experience. And believe me, none of it really matters anyway, because Apple's likely going to be switching to their own built CPUs in 2020. And those will be really, really fast because of that hardware optimization with the software. Those are likely going to outperform Intel CPUs of the time if they're anything like the A series of chips we've seen in our iPhones and iPads. But this is Apple. They'll find something to make it more controversial, most likely abandoning the keyboard for a touch keyboard interface entirely. No more mechanical keys. But that's a different video. We can talk more about that later. Let me know what you think of Apple patching this problem and apologizing and doing the right thing. I want to hear what you guys think down in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.